of the airspace. Now, and again, sort of know your privilege. When there's an issue right now about the young man who has been given a particularly, what I consider an egregiously light sentence for rape, as a woman, I am going to talk about that. As a man, you might need to give me some space to do that. So just be aware of your privilege when you are blogging about a particularly topical issue. And before you blog on a particularly hot button issue, it might be good to do some back-end research from people who are not like you and what they are saying. So that's just a caveat on that. One of the things that I do think is different about blogging and writing a regular essay is that, again, you have a lot more space. I mean, in an essay, people expect to engage with you for 10 pages. Unless you're Krusty Old Dean, people aren't going to engage with you that long in a blog post. But, so your writing really needs to be tight writing, short sentences, short paragraphs. If you actually want, and I'll go over some of that if anybody wants me to, about sort of what I consider tight writing, a good way to think is a blog post is what happens if an essay and a news article and people get together after a wild night of drinking. You want the content part of the essay. You want the emotional part of that. You want the reflective part of that. But you want the short, tight sentence structure of a news article. And those together sort of form the more successful blog post. And I will also say, don't underestimate the power of lists. If you go to a blog called On Faith, and as soon as I do this, I'll do some examples of blogs, they've pretty much made, and BuzzFeed, I mean, they're making their whole popularity on lists. So do not underestimate the power of lists in a blog. It just works. I mean, people are frenzied. They can flip through that list. They can see your bullet points and move on. Next up, content. Now, this is where I started to get the faith-based content. So after reading far more blogs in preparation for this than I ever thought I would read in my life, and Pew Research, these are some of the things that stood out to me. People like to read faith-based blogs. That is a tongue twister, by the way, right up there with part of Right One's Eucharist, that offer practical and useful insight. Blogging the Bible. Most people do not have a working knowledge of Holy Scripture anymore. So I've seen some powerfully useful blogs where somebody has taken and they've blogged the Gospel of Mark. And these are really great blogs, by the way, for churches to do. If you've got a Bible study group that's studying the Gospel of Mark, that they can go through and do that. So blogging the Bible, blogging the letters of Paul, but individual blogs. Prayer practices. The number one thing I hear as a priest is, how do I increase my prayer life? People, and I always say, well, it's really not that hard, but we've sort of got this myth that it really is. Prayer practices are great things to blog about. And by the way, you don't have to get really technical and do a whole series on Ignatian prayer practices. You can do, as Society of St. John the Evangelist, they did a great series this last Lent. That is a good example of using a blog to increase prayer practices. How many of you have seen the blog post about picturing Advent, where there's a different word every day? Yeah, that's a good example of a blog post that's a prayer practice. What about a blog post that talks about the prayer practice of gratitude? Walking through your life every day. And again, it's not enough to me in a blog post to just say, hey, have gratitude. Talk about your own experience of not being grateful. What happened when you began to cultivate a prayer practice of gratitude? Again, you want to reach back into that personal reflection, but find the balance between personal reflection and emotional oversharing. Faith-based parenting is a really hot blog area right now. I see more blogs on this than anything else. How to raise, and unfortunately, very few of them say what I think is the obvious: get your kids to church. That would be the big one. But I also realize that the world is very different now. So faith-based parenting is a big blog area. How to celebrate the holy days at home. Remember, most of our parishioners now are attending church once or twice a month. How to celebrate Advent, Lent, ordinary time. Yes? Is the market saturated with faith-based parenting blogs right now? Yes. But again, I think that there's always room for good stuff. I mean, the market's always saturated with anything. So if you bring a particular insight, you know what I don't see in the faith-based parenting blogosphere? It assumes that all of the faith-based parenting is going on with upper middle-class white people. I think the area of faith-based parenting that's severely lacking are faith-based parenting of single parents, faith-based parenting of same-sex parents, and faith-based parenting that takes into account the different cultural and ethnicities that are in our church. So all the faith-based parenting blogs that I see that are popular right now tend to be very heavily focused on basically white suburbia. So that to me would be an area. The other thing that people do is define themselves to others and help understand themselves. As I like to say, no, not all Episcopalians love Downton Abbey. We have so many blogs out there that speak to what we are not. It is wonderful to see a blog that says what we are. You know, we are the Episcopal Church in this way. Christianity looks like this. We're all not, bigots or whatever. But people share blogs in many ways if you look on Facebook, because part of what they're saying is this is who I am. So if you have a blog for your church that can be very clear about who your church is, what your church does in the community, what you hope to do, what are your hopes and dreams, where are the times that you have failed as a church? There's some good blog posts. I think that people use blogs to sort of find themselves more deeply centered in who they are as a church. And also, again, basic information about Christianity. Hows, whys, what nows. Why are we Christians? Why are there so many denominations? Why do some people celebrate the Lord's Supper and others celebrate the Holy Eucharist? Don't discount the value of very well-written basic information on blog posts. People love surprising blogs. So this is a blog post that I've seen on Facebook, How God Messed Up My Happy Atheist Life. Please Google it. But that's a great example of a surprising blog post. And it's a beautiful blog post. And also the value of a good title, too. The Gentleness of the Wrath of God. That was another great blog post that I ran across. But they were surprising posts because you sort of went into it not knowing what the person was going to write and what they were going to say. And as you read it, there's this lovely self-reveal that led to a greater truth about what it means to be Christian, what it means to understand a wrathful God. And those are just great examples that people like to be surprised, not in the M. Night Shyamalan way, but in sort of a faith is surprising. This last one can give you some good... People like blog posts that inspire awe, anger, and anxiety. And I read that and thought, great, how am I going to fire that in there? Awe we kind of get. Anger we're all excited about. But anxiety isn't something that I think as Christians we should go around cultivating in people. Politicians do that well enough for all of us. But then I thought about what Paul says in Romans 8. What can separate us from the love of God? And the reality in our life is that we live in a culture where people feel very separated from love. And that's an anxious thing. And there is power in sharing that's okay to feel that way. But then what does the church have to say about that? How do we respond? So I call it the 3 A's, awe, anger, and anxiety. That is a good place to, when you look at your post, to say, what does this inspire? I would say, too, use anger judiciously. I don't think there's a lot to be said about a blog post that just makes people mad without then directing that anger into some action. So I'm going to stop here. Are there any questions so far? Yes. How is my blog voice different from my preaching voice? Well, first of all, preaching is an oral art. I think one of the worst uses of blogs, and I will say this later, is to just repost your sermon, unless you rework your sermon as an actual essay. My preaching voice is very focused in that space of the Holy Eucharist to the community present. And I recognize that my blog voice reaches a far greater audience. I I actually probably tend to be snarkier in my preaching voice than I am my blog voice, which is a little unsettling to people, I'm sure, on both ends of that spectrum. But again, I think Chris is laughing because he's heard me preach. Do you agree? Okay. But I also think, again, because preaching is a visual element, you're picking up on nonverbal cues, you're picking up on the motions of my hands, the expressions of my face, my pauses. Those things all go to the narrative. Those are not present in your blog voice. So my blog voice is a much more thorough voice. I'm very careful to sort of lead people down on a blog post, whereas in a preaching voice, I tend to sort of let people wander and make their own. Again, what not to blog. Don't blog your sermons. Podcasting for sermons is a great idea, so I'll put that in there. I think if you take your sermon and you rework it for an essay and give it some context, then we can talk shop. But I think if you just take your sermon manuscript and drop it in your blog and hit post, I don't know that that's a really great use of your blog post. Overly broad or overly narrow topics, not necessarily a great thing to try to blog why we should believe in the Trinity. Greater minds than mine have tried to tackle that. I just say it's a holy mystery and leave it alone. So I think, though, that, don't try to eat the whole large pizza, but also don't get too narrow in your focus. I kid you not, I saw a blog post about 3 weeks ago that was on the use of the word "thee" in the Holy Eucharist. And I thought, who's losing sleep on this one? It wasn't a badly written post, but I kept thinking, a few tweaks could have had a wonderful blog post on the value of language we don't speak day to day in the service. Which was kind of where this person was trying to post on, to say, right, one of the things that's beautiful about Right One is it's not the language I speak day to day. It shifts me out slightly from where I am with God. But that was not where it went. So, kind of find, again, via Medea here. Again, always edit your post. This is not your journal entry. Write a post, wait for however long you need to wait on it, edit again, and then post it. Do not write out of anger and post that. Write out of anger, but then leave it alone and then come back to it. I see lots of people nodding. You can get good stuff out of that place, but don't post that. Make sure you edit. Plagiarize posts. This kind of should go without saying, but I have had posts of mine that I found in other people's blogs that they just said another blogger said. If you can't find who the blogger is, then don't post it. If you are going to quote from another blogger, that's fine, but put the link back so they can read it. The other thing that I find a little troubling is when people use another blogger's idea and then post off that on their own. I did a post for On Faith not too long ago about 10 things I wish people knew about the Episcopal Church. Another blogger actually posted 10 things I wish priests knew about the Episcopal Church. And again, I thought it was good content, but it was sort of like, dude, get your own ideas, or wait some time. I mean, and we clearly said, like, this blog post was here, but it felt a little bit like I had done all the work and then somebody else just got to come and copy my homework and then change a few words. That was it. You've got original content. Use your content. And if you do want to build off somebody else's post, if somebody writes about an account that really stirred you, hit email and ask them, say, gosh, I read this blog post that you had written on your experience of going to an iftar dinner in Ramadan. And it really called in me the account of when I was visiting and went to a Shabbat dinner. And I wondered if I could sort of build off that. I've almost never known any blogger that would say no to that. But it is nice to just say, thank you for your idea. I'm going to build on that. Don't add to the noise. So bad writing, at the essence of all writing, your writing should be good writing. Your writing should be good writing. It should use proper grammar. It should use proper commas, semicolons. I mean, make your writing good. It is, I had an English professor tell me in college, when somebody has a typo or bad grammar, it interrupts the conversation I'm having with the text. If you don't care enough to work on your grammar to make that worthwhile, don't blog. I mean, it's just, don't interrupt the person's relationship with the text because you didn't want to go over it. I mean, we all have typos that pop up, that's fine. I hate clickbait titles. I hate them. People, and because you'll read this title, it has nothing to, how many of you have ever clicked on a blog post or a post and thought, oh, and this is what they usually look like in the secular world. I can't believe Kim Kardashian did this, ... And you clickbait, because you want to see what she did, because you're like, what did she do? I can imagine, and it turns out that she bought a pair of shoes, and it's an advertisement for a pair of shoes. Be accurate about your titles. Again, How God Disrupted My Happy Atheist Life. That's a great title, but it was dead on what the content was too. And so make your titles reflect it. Don't use titles just to get people to click on your blog and read it. You only can do that once or twice before people don't come to your blogs anymore. And so that is the information part. Yes? Okay. Mm-hmm.
More about that, about when you want to be consulted.
I think that he talked about, to talk more about the plagiarism of plagiarizing an idea and sort of the fine line. I think that if somebody could look at a blog post I wrote and then look at one Chris wrote and see that his was earlier and they were substantially similar, then I think that you've got an issue. And yours would be better, yes, of course. Part of it is, a lot of it's solved in the simple line of, I was reading this blog and, where that jumping off point is. Pardon? Give credit where credit's due. I heard
you saying, asking people that just saying, I found this in XYZ blog is not enough for you, and that you wanted.
Saying that I found this in XYZ, not. I think if somebody's actually using substantially parts of your blog or commenting to parts of your blog is another. And I think that's also a sort of careful area. Be very careful about commenting back to somebody's blog post. One thing to remember about blog posts that are often posted on like Huffington Post and that, the writers don't control the title and they don't control the image. So, if you get all freaked out about that a lot of people didn't like the image on that particular post by On Faith. It was bourbon on a Bible. I had no control of that. I got a fair amount of hate mail about that, and I was like, y'all need to not have so much energy about this. And I responded to all of them and said, I didn't have any control over the image. So I think part of it is trust your originality, and if you're inspired by somebody else, see how far that inspiration goes. If it's just that you read a blog post and it suddenly gives you permission to and the forms an essay about your experience with a situation, that's one thing. It's an entirely another thing if somebody has a post that is something like 10 things I love about the liturgy, and then your post is 10 things I hate about the liturgy, and it's dead on to their post. That's when you're, I think, getting into some real issues there. And it is a fine line. I mean, sometimes you just do beg permission, beg forgiveness, and, do it anyway. I do want to show you some examples of so this is On Faith. I think they do a great job of lists in blogs. This is one, 10 things I wish everyone knew about the new charismatics. And they just straight on, we are spiritual and religious, we are late. I mean, you can read that very easily Look at the space, lots of white. Now they have ads on there, so there's that. They have buttons, by the way. You definitely want to have buttons on your platform to share for Facebook and to share on Twitter. So if I'm reading this blog and I think, I need to tell my friends about this because it's useful to me, I got some understanding out of it. Click, share on Facebook. There you go. So you don't want, make it as easy as possible. Don't have them have to copy the link and then go to their Facebook page and all that. They just do a really nice job of, and it's a blog that I recommend that you go to see how they do it. They just do a really nice job of what I call list-based blogging. There's a lot of content in all of their blogs that are lists, but they don't look like you're reading a lot of material because it's just so well done. They actually, when they ask you to write these, have definite word counts, which was, anybody want to guess? 1,500. Yeah, they say 15 to 1750. So they just do a nice job of that. It's a good place to look. Now, they're big companies, so they have a little more resources than a lot of churches or individuals do, but they do a nice job of that. On the counter to that is a blog by somebody that I have great respect for as a blogger, Krusty Oldine. I know when I sit down to read a blog, I need to go pour a drink because it's going to be 7,000 words, at least, if not more. But part of, and this is one of his shorter ones, okay, just showing you that. But they're good, and part of it is that, and this is Tom Ferguson, Tom knows his audience. Tom is not writing for people who are standing in line at Target wanting to know something more about the Episcopal Church. He's writing for people who have a very deep academic bent toward information about the Episcopal Church. One of his series that he does is he blogs answers for the general ordination exams. Most of you, how many of you have taken the GOEs? Yeah. All the rest of you, you're not his audience. He knows that. So he's writing for that audience. Now, you can read it. I don't know why you would. I wonder why I read them sometimes, just to like, oh, I'm going to read this again. So he knows his audience, and he writes for that audience. Tom really has his membership on this blog is 148. So he's not writing for a broad audience. So I think this is a great example of he knows his audience, and he writes for them. Oh, yeah, that membership number is not the number of hits he gets on his blog. Those are the people that have signed up to get their blog and their email. And I read his blog, and I'm not a member. So, yeah. But I think, again, this is a dense blog. This is an example of what I would tell every beginner blogger not to do, but he does it well because he knows who he's writing for. It is solid content. I also know that it's going to take me 3 paragraphs to get into what he's actually writing about. He's the Dostoevsky of Episcopal bloggers. I know that when I read him. But again, I know that about him, and I know his stuff is good, and I have a relationship with him through this blog. I don't know. There's so many lists out there about 25 Christian bloggers you should be reading. They're the standard people, like, and they're all big names. They'll be like Rachel Held Evans, Sarah, I just lost her last name. Google, yes. She asked how do you find that? You just Google. Google is your friend. You can just type in Christian blogs, faith-based blogs, a topic. There are blogs that are dedicated solely to, parenting. There are blogs dedicated solely to grieving, practice. So you can Google that, look at those. So I want to get back to the question about platform. The 2 major platforms for blogging are WordPress and Blogger. I use both of them. Forward Movement uses WordPress, so I'm the person behind 50 Days of Fabulous, and I'm mostly an editor on that. So we use WordPress for that. My blog is This is all Blogspot. I pay $10 a year for this. So, and it's very easy to go set it up. $10 a year in Blogger, which is Google based, by the way, will get you the dirtysexyministry.com. So it's yourblogname.com. If you don't pay it for free, it's dirtysexy.blogspot.com. That's not. I think that doesn't necessarily matter one way or the other what you do with that. So those are your platforms. They're pretty user friendly, and if you think they're not, there's plenty of videos on YouTube that can take you step by step of how to set up your own blog. So, yes. This participant brought up the Text This Week, which is just a website, and they aggregate, which is they just bring together lots of blogs that have to do with a particular text, the religious text. The one thing I caution about Text This Week is a lot of those links are dead links. They have a lot of dead links, but it is a good place to go see, a sense of the blogs. So those are the two major platforms. They are free and or very cheap. Blogspot by Google and WordPress. I would say that for beginners, I think that WordPress is probably an easier use than Blogger is. Chris would argue with me on that, but I think it is. It just kind of depends, but pick one and kind of stay with it. Yes. Yeah, and that's it. I'm a Google user, so this worked out. But WordPress, they're both very easy. You can get pictures. If you're going to, and you may need to have on your homepage a picture. It doesn't necessarily need to be you if it's your church, something about your church. But, have a picture. Get a good blog title. Somebody asked me, why Dirty Sexy Ministry? Y'all all pay attention to it, don't you? There actually is a story behind that. I will tell you over bourbon. But here's what I think are not good blog titles. Blogging for Jesus. What about that makes me want to go there? Funeral Home Church, that's a blog I'd read. So, which actually, is that a blog? Is that your blog title, Funeral Home Church? Yeah. I think Funeral Home Church is clickbait for me. I'd be like, that looks awesome. Let me go see what that is. And then again, you say there because you read and go, that's good stuff. So I think that, choosing your blog title is an important part. What is it? Is it short? Is it something that people can remember? And is it accurate about the content of what your blog is? Monastery is a good one that, you all know. That's a great blog title. It captures the fact that she's a mom and this is a religious space. Just perfect blog title. So I'm going to stop here. Any questions? Yes.
How often do you post? If you're writing and then letting something, how long do you let something as far as editing and coming back to something?
So content, she asked about how often do I post and how long do I let something sit and simmer for edit. So I think most blogs you should post about once or twice a week. If it's an individual blog, you can probably post on the less frequent end once a week. If it's a corporate blog, church, diocese, I think twice a week sort of is your minimum. Again, remember, more frequent posts drive traffic. Traffic drives readers. Readers drive shares. You get the numbers up. With that said, if you happen to see, my last post was like 3 weeks ago, so I'm not exactly the standard on that one right now. I have 5 blog posts in my computer that I'm working on. And some posts I write in the morning, and then I post in the evening. And it just depends. I have some posts, particularly ones that are written out of a particularly significant emotional event, especially as if when I'm writing them, if I am teary or I get angry, I feel all that come up, I know that one needs to probably sit for at least 2 weeks before I go back to it. I never post something that I cannot read out loud and not cry. If I can't do that yet, it means I need to have some more distance from it. So the editing part of it really is a very personal part of your writer. And this is when I get to say, one of the things we hate to do as adults is be beginners. It's why I think adults don't try new stuff, because we don't like to fail. We don't like to make mistakes. We have somewhere in our souls this idea that we must be perfect because we are voting and most of us are paying our own bills. I am here to tell you that it is okay to be a beautiful mess. It is okay to be a beginner. My early blog post, when I redesigned my blog, I stripped about half of them because they were awful. Because they needed to be. I didn't know what I was doing, you know. But what I would go back and read is, while the post was terrible, there might be one sentence in there that I went, gosh, that was really good writing. So I just took the sentence, stuck it over, worked on it later. It's okay to learn the way by walking as you're blogging. And part of it is that's what you will do if you are a regular writer. You know, you will learn the way by walking. You will learn what it is like to spend. I just finished an essay set for a devotion company, you know, weeks on something, and then you go back and read it, you know, and go, oh, this is just shit. And, you know, you just have to ditch it. That's a hard thing to do because you birthed those words. But it's good that nobody needs to read this. So you just learn that. And part of that is, you know, you learn that part of your writing. You learn how to express. So just do it. That's part of it. You have to write. Do not blog if you don't like to write. And you don't have to sit in front of a computer while people are out having fun. Don't do that. Any other questions? Yes, in the back. Do I ever post to my blog and mark as private something I want to keep but not to be seen? No. I don't think anything on the internet is private, so I don't post it. If I have something that I want to keep but I don't want to be seen, it's saved into my computer under my Dirty Sexy Ministry. You know, pardon? Yeah, you know, I have a file there, so I don't ever post anything. I have drafts that are posted but not published yet that are sort of getting there, but I never post anything that I want to keep as private because I don't believe security. Okay, there was one question behind you, and then, so. Okay.
Non-denominational church guy who is grown mega churches. And I am very struck with the fact that all of these podcasts, almost with interviews and stuff, have the list thing. And so I thank you for bringing that, because I've been puzzling over why are these places growing the way they are, and my Episcopal Church is struggling. And I think we're missing something. I'm not quite sure what. But seeing this on the website, which I'm not is helpful. That's it.
All right. She was just pointing out about thanking me for bringing up that lists are a valid and useful way to blog. So if you're just starting out, I would say blog at least once a week and maybe even twice. And let your friends online know that you're blogging. I mean, this is when you kind of email your friends or say, hey, Chris, I'm blogging. Do you mind sharing my blog post on your Facebook page? Self-promotion is key. Here's one of the things that helped me as blogger. Does anybody out here recognize the name Peace Bang? Oh, she's a blogger in the Unitarian Church, and she's like a big fashion blogger and had for a while a radio spot in Boston. She came across my blog and reposted it on her blog. I went from about 300 hits to 3,000 in a week. And I have since met her in real life and said, you know, I kind of owe you that because you pushed me there. If you've got a new blog and you know an Episcopal blogger, I mean, I love giving free press to new bloggers. I think that the world needs good people telling amazing stories about faith out there. You know, contact bloggers you know and say, hey, I've started this blog. Have at least 10 posts when you do this and say, do you mind giving some shout outs to me, giving some PR to me. I know very few bloggers that would refuse to do that. So, make sure you follow them. Don't all email me tomorrow because I've got deadlines to do anyway. But, be your own best PR person. Because here's the thing. If you've got something to say, make sure that you've done everything you can that people hear it. Jesus did not go to the far reaches of Jerusalem where there was one person. Jonah did, but Jesus did not, where there was one person to share his message. He stood on a mountain in the Gospel of Matthew where thousands of people were around and said, let me tell y'all some stuff. Do the same thing with your blog. If it is worth writing and you think it needs to be out there, then self-promote. Get it on Twitter. Get it on Facebook. Hit your friends up. Talk to people who are blogging and say, hey, can you do this? I'm going to give Acts 8 blog force a shout out. If I remember reading this right on Acts 8, if you go to Acts 8 on their blog force part of it, they ask a question every couple of weeks, I think. I'm not sure when they do it. So if you're a computer, and they open the answers to anybody. And if you did a blog post on that, you could submit it to them and see what happens. So there's a lot of ways for you to sort of self-promote your own blog. Here's the thing. Don't just wait for the Holy Spirit to do it for you. Kind of put some energy behind that yourself. So other questions? I'm going to do a really short section. I'm just looking at the clock here. Are we done at 10? I mean, 12? 12:15, okay. Oh no, I got an audience. So start doing my stand-up routine. But I do want to hit some stuff on sort of content, like, and this is sort of a English 101. So is everybody kind of at a place where we can go forward, or do we have some more questions? Okay. This is what I call sort of the core of a good blog post. First of all, get it. Journalists call this the lead. Oh no, it's not. I'm reading from notes. Yeah, we're just doing the blue screen of death right now. Your lead is basically what I tell people. What motivates you to write the story? What motivates you to write the story? And you hear journalists talk about you buried the lead. Yeah. So you want, you really kind of want, you don't want your lead to be 48 paragraphs. Krusty L. Dean buries the lead every time, but I know he's going to do it, so I'm good with that. But, a writer told me one time, you should be able to read your lead, your sentence or sentences in one breath. So that's sort of a good how-to on that. But basically what I tell about the lead is it's the sign on the door that invites people into your story. So what is the sign on your door? I've got, I'm working on a piece right now about the pilgrimage of grief and how funerals are a mark on that pilgrimage. And sometimes they are the beginning steps on the pilgrimage because you didn't expect to go on this pilgrimage and you're not sure that you're going to be able to survive the journey. And the funeral is the thing that reminds you that other people have walked this road too, and it will scar you to do it, and you will be changed. So that is part of my lead. Now, I'm working to get that down, but that's part of the lead, the pilgrimage of grief. Now, how many of you heard that and went, I think I might want to read that? I hope many of you raise your hand because otherwise it's good. But I mean, that's what you want to think about your lead. What is the sentence or sentences that are going to get your reader to walk into your story more deeply? Most readers now have so many options they don't have to stay around. So if they're 3 or 4 sentences in and they don't know what's going on, they're out. By at least your 3rd paragraph, I think that you need to have and this is a journalism term, a nut graph. I think that's a really horrible term. It sounds like something a squirrel would do when he had too much to drink. But I sort of call it the seat of your soul. By your 3rd paragraph in your writing, you need to have given a part of your soul to the reader. What is the seat of your soul in this writing? If you are writing The piece that's up on 3060 Minutes right now is She Speaks. And part of it, if you've read that, is by the third paragraph, what I say is, I am tired as a woman in the church of having my voice stripped from me by men. And I just, at that point, gave the writers a piece of it. That was a hard piece to write. It actually, somebody asked me, did it really happen? Yes, it did. Years ago. So it took me a while to get that on paper. But you want to give people why you want to come into my writing, and then once you're in, here's a piece of my soul. Cautiously, don't overshare. So it's a piece of your soul that you're willing to share, not a piece of your soul that's still got blood dripping from it. Don't do that. And I'm sure you've all kind of read those memoirs too on pieces. As you're writing, ask yourself, so what? That's kind of a resonant question I ask when I write, so what? So what about trying to raise children in a world where the church is seen to law? So what? So what about conversation among people you disagree with that still preserves the dignity of relationship? And you have to answer the so what. Somebody needs to answer it. So what? And that, every few sentences as you're writing, ask yourself that. So what? So what? As you're writing this. Because what that will do is it gives you meat to the thing you're writing. You're not just writing to put words out there. An image that Kevin Ekstrom uses, and I steal it from him happily, is be careful to avoid the flour in the brownie. I am a huge fan of brownies, but to make them you have to have enough flour. But how many of you have ever had a brownie that had too much flour in it? Yeah, you're just like, Jesus does not love me anymore. Your writing needs to have enough binding in it to hold it together, because you need something to hold the words together. So that may be sort of a clever aside. It may be a remembrance. It may be an explanation. But too much of that, and it just overwhelms, and you've got this dry piece of writing that's not that interesting. There's a quote, and Stalin, I think, said it, that the death of 3 is a tragedy and the death of 3 million is a statistic. Flour is a lot of statistics. It doesn't help most people to hear the 25, if you're writing, say you were writing about the changing dynamic of the church, 25% of the people don't go to church anymore. Okay, that sounds all nice and good. But when you say 1 in 4 children in our culture who are struggling to know that they are valuable and worthwhile and have inherent dignity because they were created by God, never hear that message. That suddenly becomes something that pulls people in. It's the goo, and you want goo. That's the thing. Flowers are statistics. So you can say 25%. Here's what that means to me. Here's why, again, the so what. So what? Well, because, I think a lot of people walk around in this world not knowing that they were created to be loved by God. And I think that's something people need to know. It's why I'm a priest, and it's why I go to the church. It's why I put up with the crap of the structure of bureaucracy of the church. I think it's a message. So when you're writing, use stuff like that for the flower, but just be careful about how you're binding it together. Don't quote people unless they need to be quoted. And a lot of times there's good quotes out there. There are fabulous quotes out there. But how many of us have read an essay that, I'm the person, when I see the indent and then this big, I just skip over it. I feel like, well, I don't need to read that. Probably not the best practice sometimes, but it sped up a lot of my reading in seminary. When you quote someone, make sure it's a quote worth hearing. I saw Jane Kenyon is one of my favorite poets. She's the beautiful poem Let Evening Come. If you haven't read it, it's one that I read on our Monday, Thursday service of Let Evening Come. And I remember when I was trying to work that into the sermon, I realized the whole poem needed to be quoted. And I was just like, you're going against all your own rules. But I mean, it just, and the story behind the poem is amazing and all this. They didn't need that. They didn't need that story. The story behind the poem on this Monday, Thursday, was the impending crucifixion, let evening come. Find, though, your quotes and use them judiciously. Do not make your blog post, it's not a legal brief. You're not quoting experts. You are the expert of your own story and your own relationship with Christ. And the last two, and this is kind of a big one, show, don't tell. Don't tell me 25% of our culture doesn't understand, affiliate with the church. Show me. People like visuals. And they like visuals that engage their head and their heart. And statistics just really engage our head. If I were to tell you that, and I am pulling this out of the air, so please do not quote me on this, that in this country, or I would say this, in Kentucky, 400,000 children go to bed every night not knowing where their next meal is coming from. But here's what I said in the sermon. Tonight in Kentucky, the entire population of Lexington, who will be under the age of 18, will go to bed tonight, and they will not know where their next meal is coming from. Show, don't tell. So use that as you write. Show people. Don't tell people that you were sad that your grandfather died. Show them what that grief looks like. Tell them what it felt like. That's what people engage with. And last, but I think not least, end your essay. I read so many essays, and they just forgot to write the last sentence. You should end your essay. You should give people something to reflect on. Again, it's your so what. So what that you've written this? What now? What do you want me to do with this? Now that you've written this beautiful essay on why waiting matters and why Advent is important to you, what now? What do I do with that? Don't ever say in conclusion, in summary, as I end. It's the last paragraph. I got that one. So avoid the Captain Obvious quotes. I would say quotes are really good when you close. Those are lovely quotes. The other one is never, ever miss an opportunity to engage emotion. I did a sermon that did become an essay, actually, on how, as Episcopalians, we love to talk about waiting and Advent as if it is the most amazing thing on earth. But if you go to the DMV, it becomes the thing that will make you drink. So where is the disconnect in this? And part of where I ended it is the essay is to talk about, we are called in Advent to wait. And that waiting looks like the waiting of a child who is finally aware of Christmas Day, and the waiting of that same child who's waiting for her mother to die. Boom. Yeah, right there. Damn, where's that essay? Yeah, and it's still, I'm still kind of like, I wrote that. I think I was drinking, but there you go. But you want to engage the emotion as you write. If it's not worth feeling, it's not worth writing. If I want to read dry writing, I'm going to read politicians' speeches. We're not writing about that. We are writing about the presence of merciful love in the world. We are writing about a God who has come to us and held in holy hands our cheeks and told us, you are good and you are here because the world needs your presence. That is worth writing about. And it's not worth writing about dry and boring. It's worth writing with passion and emotion. And so when you are writing, feel that God guiding your fingers and writing with you and through you. Questions? Comments? Have you died, Chris? Like, Chris, you're checking your email, aren't you? You're checking yeah. To be fair, I'll tell you, so Chris was one of my ministry interns at St. Michael. So somehow he managed to become a priest in spite of following me around for 6 months. So, a question. I can repeat it because I can hear.
Like, I recently wrote meditation for Forward Day by Day,
Mhm.
which is the flagship meditation of our movement. And I noticed after writing all those meditations that I was finishing many of them with a question,
Mhm.
you know, and perhaps the format of the question was, well, how does this apply to you? Or what, you know, what about you?
Mm.
And it seems to me that when we write blogs, we also have a tendency to do that.
Mhm.
Kyle Oliver was telling me that many people determine the success of, you know, the posts depending on how many people respond
Mhm.
at the bottom. I don't know. I know that's a question here.
I hear what you're saying. And part of that is, again, the medium that you're writing for. And when I wrote for Forward Day by Day, I found myself doing the same thing. So I'm glad that Hugo and I are both equally anxious about certain things in writing. That medium of Forward Day by Day, I think, lends itself to ending with a question and lends itself to saying, you know, here's this reflection and what now? Sometimes blog posts end with that and sometimes don't. And again, as you look at different blogs, some blogs absolutely think that success is I end with a question and how many people respond to that. I think that that might not be the best measure of a blog success because I don't actually, in most of my blogs for Dirty Sexy Ministry, want people to answer a question. You know, I realized about 3 years ago that many of my blog posts sort of said, go sit with this small part of your soul that you had orphaned and make friends with her or him. Or on occasion have a bourbon with that person, that part of your soul. So I don't know that I want people sharing that, you know, on there. I don't want to ask people to say, now share yours. But I did find at 50 Days of Fabulous, so that the structure of 50 days is the read part, and it could be a piece of art or scripture or a quote or whatever, and then there's the reflection. And then you very deliberately put in respond. And if you've read 50 Days, then, and it's a Forward Movement online resource, the respond were often questions. And I kind of got stressed out, like, gosh, nobody's posting. Like, there would be 2 or 3 people, and nobody would post. And I knew what Forward Day by Day looked like. And I'm thinking it's sort of nobody's engaging. But what I found is that people were sharing it on their Facebook page, and they were responding there. So we weren't getting the audience on the actual website, but that conversation was going out into the circle of people who were sharing it on their Facebook, and that mattered. I mean, I was like, oh, because I stalked people's Facebook to find this out, by the way. And then at the end of it, we sort of did the wrap-up post of thank you for being in the stream with us, and just lots of comments about how people had used the questions in small groups and that. So I think that you have to be very careful about, you know, measuring your blog success by the number of people who comment. Fewer and fewer people, I think, are commenting on blog posts now. I mean, some of the statistics that I looked at from 2015 to 2016 were talking about that the most comments on blog posts were sort of political or, you know, blog posts that attracted people fighting in the comments. And I think comments have sort of become known for that. I mean, we just say never read the comments. So it is part and parcel of again, finding the voice of your blog. Some blogs absolutely have lots of comments down there. You know, allow your blog to be birthed into the writing universe. Other questions? Well, you're not a writer unless you've had writer's block. First of all, as a writer, if you wait to write until you feel like writing, you're never going to write. It's a very, one of my favorite quotes about writing is by Ernest Hemingway, who says, writing is sitting at your typewriter and bleeding. I have a particular time every day that I write, and it's not every day. I wish I could say, oh, every day I get up and I write from 7 to 11. I don't. most days I write in the morning because that tends to be quieter time for me, and I write. There are times that all I have written on a page is I don't have anything to write, and I don't know why I think I need to do this, and I want another cup of coffee. I mean, and that's it. But and having gone through the process of writing the book and writing I had to do the 4 day by day. This time last year I was doing the ones for this May that I just finished. There were some that I just thought I would read the scripture and go, I got nothing. I want to just write, I don't know why this is in the Bible. This isn't really good news. But I figured I'd get that sent back to say. But part of it is what I can tell you, writer's block is a lot like walking through the desert. You just keep walking. Because I promise you, if you keep writing, I've gone back to things I've written when I hated writing, when I just felt like nothing was coming out. And on 3 pages, there was that one phrase that mattered. And that phrase then pushed me forward into what I need to write. If you feel inspired as a writer, stop everything you're doing and put it on paper. I mean, I just tell you, I don't care what you like. Oh, no, got it. I need to write this down now. I carry a little notebook in my purse with me that I write that down. So just, it happens. Everybody, I don't know why. If any writer ever says, I never get writer's block, I think you are a liar. So I would say keep writing. And one of the tricks that one of my friends who writes taught me is when he hits writer's block, he mutes the TV and turns it on. And he looks up at the picture, and then he makes himself write 3 to 5 sentences on what he sees on television. And that just the act of writing, it's kind of like, if any of you do spin classes or whatever, no one really likes spin class, I don't think. I think you just do it. I think, but it's that point, it's the spin class, you just do it. So that may be a help to do that. Does it? Yes, it does. Does it sometimes feel like 40 days and 40 nights? Yes, it does. One of the things I find is that when I get on a writing schedule, I'm a much better writer than I do if I'm just like, oh, I think I'll write today. I have been very fortunate in writing that my blog has allowed me to get paid for writing. So I do devotions and have written a book and get to do this awesome stuff. But there's a lot of the season of Lent in writing. And what really unsettles me is that my best writing often comes when my life is falling apart on every other level. And so I've kind of had this deal with the devil, like, okay, I may feel really good about life right now. Leave it alone, because I know that cycle will come back, that life will be hard, but in that, to me, again, lotus grows in the mud, and so welcome Lent. We're going to walk through it and believe that Easter always comes. You got a question? One more, okay. How much time do I devote, and do I have different places? I probably devote about 5 to 10 hours a week of writing, which sounds like not a lot, and it's not. Part of because of the nature of what I write. If I am writing a book, if I'm doing manuscript, it's much more than that, because there are things like deadlines and editors who don't like you when you miss deadlines. I write in different places. I tend to do my best writing at home. I just have a room at the house that's, I write a lot at my kitchen table. I write a lot, sitting on my couch with my lapboard propped up and my computer, and my dog likes to, when I write, smush herself right next to me here on the right side. I do not do my best writing in coffee shops or places like that because I get too involved in watching people. My friend Tim Skank, who does Lent Madness with Scott Gunn, loves to write in a coffee shop. I don't think if we closed all the Starbucks, we'd never see anything out of Tim again. But and that place can move. I mean, when I've had a particular, when I was doing the 4 day by day writing those essays, I was actually on a retreat for a week to finish them because I needed just to go away and get them done, and that was going to happen away on retreat. So part of that is, where do you write best? where do you feel best about that? And let that change too, because where I began my writing in a library downtown in the city that I lived in at the time, because I didn't feel like the church was a safe place for me to write. So I would go to the library for lunch and write. That's changed. I wouldn't write in the library now. So, and follow up. I do. I'm actually the rector of St. Michael's in Lexington, so I have a full-time job too. So I write for that. I write a little post for our weekly email newsletter. Our church does not have a blog. That is a conversation that I am considering right now. One of the things I will tell you, clergy, and lay people too, if you write, but this is particularly for clergy, if you write for a church blog and you post on the church blog, it is the church's property. So that's one of the reasons that Dirty Sexy Ministry is mine. That's why, it's shared on our church website and all of that, but it's work product. And so if you're a priest and you are writing and you're posting it on the church website, or if your church has a blog, that is probably under most intellectual property laws the property of the church. Probably that's not ever an issue, but just know that that's there. So, that's a consideration to have. Now, there's a question of if you write something and you post it on your personal blog first, and then a couple of weeks later you post it and you say this was a post on that. I think there's some question about that intellectual property. But where that comes down into it is a lot of clergy have aspirations of taking blog posts from their church newsletters or whatever and compiling them into a book of essays and publishing them. If you do that, the church is actually a copyright owner of that. So just to be FYI. Okay. Are there any other questions? I will be around until about 3:30 or 4. So if you have any questions, I am readily available through about 400 mediums on social media. So if you find me and ask me a question, thank you so much for offering your words and your stories to a wider world. And I pray that the Spirit of God inspire you to invite the people who are seeking God into your words and stories. Thank you very much.